key is socialism. One never thinks or imagines that this can happen again. No one thinks it could happen here. Well, did the Germans think that it could? Did the Germans sit there at night and go, you know, that Hitler thing, that could end in concentration camps and the liquidation of the Jews? Did they really think that? Or did people say all along the way, wait, this isn't going well, this isn't us, we shouldn't go down this way. And then they were told they were conspiracy theorists, they were told that it was wrong, that they would even speak out, and then the beating started, and then the execution started, and then that argument just went away. I want you to be aware that people will say to you that I am trying to get you into religion because I want to control or manipulate you, or I want the churches to control or manipulate you. Nothing could be further from the truth. I want you one with God. I want you to have self-reliance or firm reliance on the protection of divine providence because I want you to be self-reliant. I know if you know your relationship with God, no man will ever put you in a camp. No man will ever tell you that they can create a right, because you know who your rights come from. Let me show you again what Nancy Pelosi said to a gathering of Catholic clergy just a few months back. Remember, huge government progressive.
On the subject of immigration, because I think the church is going to have to play a very major role in how people are treated. The cardinals, the archbishops, the bishops that come to me and say, we want you to pass immigration reform, and I said, but I want you to speak about it from the pulpit. Some who oppose immigration reform are sitting in those pews, and you have to tell them that this is a manifestation of our living the Gospels.
Okay. So she wants them to talk about what is the right bill to pass. I'll get up from my church and I will walk out when my church starts to tell me who to vote for or how to vote. I want my church to teach me correct principles, and then I can figure it out. How do we treat each other? I don't want to hear about health care and how health care is social justice and how great it is for me to have health care. I don't want that. You know why? Because that's a mixing of church and state. I do, however, want people to have firm reliance on divine providence and know that our faith, as Benjamin Franklin says, the American faith is there is a God, that we will have to answer to him when we meet him. He gets a little pissy, paraphrasing Ben Franklin, if you haven't been a good dude. The best way to make him happy is to serve him, and the best way to serve him is to serve your fellow man. Now, nobody has to talk to me about health care. It's my job, because of individual salvation, to be charitable, because that will serve God. That's the key. But I don't think these progressives, they look at God as something they can use. Again, here she is talking to a group of spiritual leaders about her, I love this, about her favorite word.
My favorite word is the Word. Is the Word. And that is everything. And you know the biblical reference, you know the gospel reference of the Word. We have to give voice to what that means in terms of public policy that would be in keeping with the values of the Word.
Her favorite word, not two words, her favorite word is the Word. Love that. Nancy, you have a different word than I do, I guess. One of the president's spiritual advisors, Jim Wallace, he also is saying that Marxism, basically, is what Jesus was. Watch.
Are you then calling for the redistribution of wealth in society?
Absolutely, without any hesitation. That's what the gospel is all about.
How there couldn't be anything further from the truth. I've never felt charitable. I've never felt like I was serving God on April 15th. I feel charitable when I give it. Jesus didn't say, give all your money to Caesar, and that person over there needs a coat. Give all your money to Caesar, and then Caesar will develop a program and buy that guy a pair of pants. Then there's the president with his views on salvation.
My individual salvation is not going to come about without a collective salvation for the country.
My individual salvation rests on our collective salvation.
Our individual salvation always depends on collective salvation.
Always depends. This is where it gets extraordinarily dangerous. We talk about spirituality every day, but we are not making public policy. We don't have the power, the apparatus to force our beliefs into law, because my salvation is on collective salvation. It's a lie. Dangerous trend. We'll talk about it next. All right, tonight we're talking about the infiltration of the government into our faith. And you might think, well, how can Glenn Beck possibly talk about this? Because he talks about faith all the time. The difference is I'm a libertarian. I am for the smallest possible government we can get. Faith, as George Washington pointed out, strengthens your duty, strengthens all of the things, charity and everything else that you need to do because you're serving God. So the government doesn't have to do it. When you have a progressive pushing this, it gets a little spooky. I want to bring in our guest, Kitty Werthmann. She knows all about the co-opting of religion by a government because she lived it under Hitler. She was born in Austria. She was 12 years old when the Nazis took over her country, and oh, the tales she has to tell. Pastor Lawrence White has joined us from Texas. He is the senior pastor of the Savior Lutheran Church in Houston. He delivers sermons regularly on this topic. He is the author of a new book. No, he is not the author of a new book. My next guest is. He is in the audience. It's Ralph Reed. He is the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and he is the author of a great new book called The Confirmation. And we'll talk to him because I asked him to come because he's the boogeyman. He's the one that the left goes, Ralph Reed. Ah! So I want to talk to him about that. And I also want to talk this. This is a story that broke on the 22nd on theblaze.com, which is my new website for news and information. Obama asked religious leaders to preach the gospel of health care reform. We'll talk about this coming up in a second, and we'll have the audience participate. But first, let me go to Kitty. May I call you Kitty?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Kitty, you moved over here to America. How old were you when you got here?
About 22.
Okay. And you lived under Hitler, and then you lived under Stalin, correct?
Well,
Or,
under Soviet
under
occupation,
Soviet.
yes.
Okay. When you saw your churches start to get co-opted, what happened? How did that start? What's the first memory you have of it?
Well, what I distinctly remember, I was 12 years old. I went to public school. I was in 6th grade. And after we elected Hitler, I walked into my classroom and the crucifix was gone. And there was Hitler's picture and the Nazi flag on each side. And the teacher announced that today we don't pray anymore. We prayed in public school. And we had religious education twice a week. But that day we did not pray anymore. We would sing Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, the national anthem.
Spooky song.
And she also said we wouldn't have religious education anymore. We would have physical education instead. And on Sunday, it was compulsory National Youth Day. And we would go at 8 o'clock in the morning to the gymnasium. And the first 2 hours, we had education.
State education.
State education, political education. Mm-hmm. Today, I would call it political indoctrination.
Sure.
We were told not to listen to our parents. They were old-fashioned old fogies. We should only listen to Hitler. Only to Hitler. because he had the most interest in us, not our parents.
Hey, Kitty, hang on, because I'll get back to your story. But let me go to you, Pastor. Have you seen? Kitty, I'm going to ask you this too. Have you seen any of this? And I want to make this very clear. This does not mean that this ends up in rounding people up in concentration camps or anything else. The idea, at least for me, when I hear never forget, it's not to never forget the 8 million that died, Jews plus. It is to never ever forget, to honor them by making sure it never happens again anywhere on earth. That's why Rwanda, to me, was a nightmare. We promised not to forget, and it happened anyway. Are you seeing anything here that is similar? First to you.
Well, I think, Glenn, whenever the state co-opts the church or seeks to diminish the influence and the relevance of the church in a culture and is successful in that, it happens by default because the church has failed to be what the church is. Martin Niemöller, whom you referred to in your introduction, after the war, as Germans are searching their consciences and trying to figure out how this could have happened in this nation with a Christian heritage stretching back 1,000 years and more, Martin Niemöller points out that it wasn't Hitler or Himmler or Goering or Goebbels. It was us, the people of God in Christ. Who else could have known? Who else had a standard by which they could have understood what was happening in their society, and we didn't stop them?
Did your parents know?
My parents immediately objected because my parents were very good Christian people. And when I would come home from the end of the Sunday, of all the fun we had, the rest of the Sunday we had sports. We got all the equipment free, and we had so much fun. And we were told that we had rights, and we had freedom, not to listen to our parents. So when I would go home, after all that fun we had on Sunday, and also we were told by the teacher if our parents would not send us on Sunday, the first time they would get a stiff letter of warning. The second time they would be fined about $300, and the third time they would be put in jail. So we dutifully attended, but we were weaned away from our parents. They drove a wedge between us and the parents.
You know, I don't know about anybody else, but in the audience, this to me doesn't sound like stuff necessarily that I've heard from Obama. This is stuff that I've heard from the UN. This is the kind of stuff that we have heard from, does anybody agree, anybody with me on that one? Yeah, Al Gore and the, yeah, exactly right. Okay, back in just a second. Okay, it's Friday, and we try to do